Hello and welcome back. So, today I am continuing with the Indo-US relations, and we were talking yesterday what are the benefits of this deal for India, and we have seen that the legitimization of our Indian weapons. Then we talked about the India getting the technology, the fuel, and we also said that India will not be treated as a rebel. So, there are many benefits I talked about. So, and these benefits are really meaningful, there is no doubt regarding this. And a couple of points, let me just is neutrality an objective of India's foreign policy? We never said neutrality, India never talked about neutrality. We are talking about positive engagement with other countries, we never talked about neutrality. So, from where Pakistan is getting nuclear fuel, yes, they have nuclear, they have some fuel in their soil. So, that is why Pakistan is able to manage it, and in today's prelim answer, non-alignment, non-alliance and neutrality are one among the objectives of the foreign policy, but you said, I mean neutrality is not in the positive engagement. Okay, if it is said and we have to correct it, neutrality is not our policy, it is a positive engagement. Okay. So, that is how it is there. Anyway, so coming back to the benefits for US. Benefits for USA. Okay. So, first of all, the benefit is, and the US is always looking, US is always looking for long term benefits. They are not looking at short term benefits. Okay. The US is always looking at long term, and they are not looking at something the short term, and they are looking at a, see, India with 1.3 billion population already, and they know that the potential for the market is so high, potential for market is very high, and the US is also looking at a situation where they can expand their technology and they can sell, or rather they can be a partner. Okay, India can be a partner in the long run. So, that is definitely in their mind. Okay. And the second point I would like to say here is that for US, China is a strategic competitor always. For USA, China is a strategic competitor. China is never a strategic partner, it is a strategic competitor, because they know that today or tomorrow China will emerge as a competitor for the US. They will challenge the US hegemony, they will challenge the US supremacy. See, of course, the US is the undisputed number one right now. China, Russia and all could be a distant number 2, or China is a distant number 2, but over a period of time, maybe in the next decade, next couple of decades, it is also sure that China will try to challenge the supremacy, because China has population, China has resources, and China has manufacturing ability. So, many things are there. So, they know that they will challenge. So, for US, China is a strategic competitor, and to contain China, US is always looking for partners. See, it is not that India will be able to help US in containing China and all beyond a point. So, that may be an overstatement about our abilities, but still to contain China, the US would like to have more partners, and India can really fit into that category. Okay. So, we can always say that the US can use India, or rather we will use the term use, or when US can utilize India in containing China also. So, we cannot directly say that US will be, or India will help US in containing and all beyond a point, we cannot say that, but they may be utilizing India's position and India's market and everything in containing China in the long run. Definitely, if you are moving closer to US, definitely it is not good news for China, that much we can always say. So, to contain China, the US will be using this partnership. Number 3, the US is, if you look at the Cold War era, I mean, let me just talk about the Cold War era. Cold War is a ideological, I told the ideological warfare, the ideological war. So, during the Cold War era, the focus, okay, so the during the Cold War era, the focus of the US or rather their ideology, what was their ideology? Ideology was capitalism. Capitalism versus communism. So, they were for free market economy, capitalist mode of economy versus the communist mode of economy. So, the ideology was always whoever is supporting capitalism, they supported. The US said that you can be an ally of mine irrespective of your what kind of government you are running, even if it is an autocrat. Okay. So, many autocrats were the US allies. Okay. Please remember, during the Cold War politics, many autocrats were US allies. See, for example, in Philippines, Ferdinand Marcos, Philippines, one of the worst dictators, autocrats, Marcos. Even if you have some time, you please look into who was Marcos and what he did and all, how bad he was. Or in Chile, we had Augusto Pinochet. Okay, Augusto Pinochet in Chile, even in Congo. See, there were many across the globe, and even in in Argentina, even Brazil. See, most of the countries who were supporters of US in the Cold War era, they were not democrats, they were autocrats. But autocracy was not a hindrance, or in a dictatorship, or if somebody is not following democracy, it was not a hindrance in having a good relations with US. The only consideration for US at that time was that whether you are supporting capitalism or not. Even if it is a democratic country, but if they are supporting socialism, or if they are having a bend of mind towards socialism, the US objected, US opposed. So, all the US friends were capitalistic or they were autocrats supporting capitalism, or many of them were autocrats and they were supporting capitalism. So, but in 1991, you know it very well, the collapse of the Soviet Union, this ideological war ended. Ideological war ended. Now, after the end of this ideological war, after 1991, what is that US is looking forward in a country as far as their ideology is concerned, philosophy is concerned. Now, the US has shifted to democracy as their philosophy, spreading democracy. Democracy and its spread is the new philosophy of US, especially till recently. I mean, Trump, what is the philosophy and all, we cannot say anything, because he himself does not believe in democracy and all. So, I am not talking about Trump. Otherwise, generally after 1991, for the last 20-25 years, the US focused on democracy. And in that category, in that context, India fits very well into the US scheme of things, because India is the largest democracy in the world. So, in the scheme of things, or rather in their idea of spreading democracy, in the US idea of spreading democracy, India fits very well, because India has a proven track record of democracy and the democratic institutions. So, the US had they had to recalibrate about India. Why US is interested in dealing with India, that is what we are talking. Why the US is interested in in such a deal, Indo-US nuclear deal, because US have seen that India on its side, as far as the spread of democracy is concerned, it is a good positive for them. It can promote and say that dekho, the largest democracy in the world is an ally of mine. So, that gives US an extra punch when it comes to their philosophy of spreading democracy. So, they were interested in improving relationship with India. And similarly, in the war against terror, again the US was finding, or rather when they signed the agreement, especially because that has become a single point agenda of the US, and India is also a victim of terrorism. India is also a victim, and there is a lot of congruence, commonalities between India and the US when it comes to fighting against terrorism. And the US has also acknowledged that there cannot be any justification for any terrorism. See, you cannot say that even if if there is a genuine cause, you cannot take terrorism as a route in achieving that goal. So, India, and there is only one terrorism, that is the terrorism against the humanity, okay, and you cannot use this kind of terrorism as a weapon in achieving any of your goals. That is what India was telling, the US also agreed. So, in the war against terror, India is also a victim, and we both have similar ideology or similar interest, and so US has found a partner in India. US has found a reliable partner in the fight against terrorism. Reliable partner in the fight against terrorism. And then another area where the US is interested is, US knows that India is a growing economy. In fact, in early 2000, Indian economy was growing at 8 to 10% growth, and it is expected that this economic growth will continue without much fail. And the US was seeing a big potential, and India is the one among the largest importer of the defense items, defense procurement for India, defense procurement. Then India is also a major importer of technology. Then in the US, we were having a good collaboration when it comes to the software industry. The Indians in the software industry, which require, US wanted the software technology, software industry. And the US also found an interesting thing in India is, we have an English speaking community, English as a common language. Right, and then US is also interested because we have rule of law, a democracy and rule of law, because it is easy to fight, and we know that if there is a dispute also, there is a Supreme Court, and Supreme Court is by and large independent. We know right now we have some problems, but otherwise Indian Supreme Court is known for its integrity and rule of law. The Supreme Court, there is in China and all, the biggest problem is there is no rule of law, and the judiciary is not independent. Okay, so there is Supreme Court. Okay, English as a common language, sir, please write it decently, clearly. आप खुद पढ़ो यार, I mean ऐसा भी मत, जो बोल रहा हूँ वो करो ना, आप तुम मेरा हैंडराइटिंग ठीक मत कराओ. Okay, from Dehradun. तो आपको मैं लिखूंगा ही नहीं, तुम ज़्यादा नाटक करेगा तो. Okay, so control your emotions and concentrate on what I am doing. Okay, so defense procurement, an importer of technology, Indian in software industry, English as a common language. Okay, rule of law. And the Supreme Court. So, the US is looking forward, for a long term partnership, because they are seeing there is a mutual benefit, and US is also seeing a potential in future, because the democracy, some congruence, the English speaking community, then democracy, human rights, rule of law, and a huge market, and India is the largest procurer of the defense equipments, or the top two, maybe China and India are the largest the countries which procure maximum defense equipments right now. So, they are seeing a huge potential in India in the future, and they knew, I mean the US philosophy is, if you want a country permanently in your side, deal with the most sensitive thing for them. Okay, so the US wanted to deal with the most sensitive thing for India. So, as far as the Indo-US issues were concerned, the relations were concerned, the most sensitive thing for India is our nuclear issue, okay, the NPT issue, the the India being excluded from NSG and India not being able to, and our weapons are not recognized. That is a major sensitive issue when it comes to US, because the US was in the forefront opposing India. So, the US decided to deal with that first, so that India is permanently on their side. So, they were investing in long term, and even today our relationship with the US has increased only after 2005. In the last 15 years, definitely there is an upswing in the relationship, and it is mainly because of this first step, the one step which the US has taken. They have compromised on this nuclear issue. In the process, the global nuclear disarmament became a question mark, but definitely it has helped in making India a permanent partner with the US. Okay. So, rule of law, I think Ocean, you have not attended the polity class. So, when you attend the polity class, rule of law will come, article 14, and the rule of law I have explained elaborately. I think you missed out, or you might have joined late, no issues. When the polity class comes, we will be explaining more about the rule of law. Okay. Now, right now I will not be able to spending time on that. So, US has not jumped from capitalism to democracy. Please understand, the capitalism, there is no challenge. The whole world has converted into capitalism. There is no country in the world which is talking about socialism today. Even in Cuba, even in China, or any of the, even in the North Korea, I mean, in all these countries, some sort of capitalism has already come in, and everybody has acknowledged and accepted that the kind of the government, the kind of political setup which has been created by the socialist countries, it is not going to work. That has been accepted. So, capitalism and the free market economy, there is no challenge right now. So, that on that front, that competition is over. Now, once that competition is over, what next? Now, if you achieve something, what next? So, it is something like, you completed, you cleared, you got IAS. If suppose you get through IAS, and if you are victorious and standing after getting a rank, now the question will come, now what next? Now, IAS to ho gaya, now ab batao. So, same thing here. Here the competition in the as far as capitalism, it is over. Now, what next is the question for US, and then the US realized that now one ideology which they should be pushing is the issue of democracy. So, that is how they have taken up this democracy. Yeah. So, how can India help in containing China? See, definitely if the US is trying, and now we are talking about Quad. If you are talking about the South China Sea, in which we are also insisting, we will talk about South China Sea, in which we are also insisting that there should be a free and open South China Sea should be there, and the US stand is that, if India stand is also there, and India is opposing, say the BRI, Belt and Road Initiative by China, US is also opposing that. So, there are many places where India's and the US stand is same. Okay. So, India's and the US stand is same. So, that is what we are looking forward, that is where the Indian help will come into picture. So, anyway, so there are many benefits for US. Then why do we fear that Obama might have not signed? See, even though there are many benefits for US, the problem is they are surrendering their core value and principle when it comes to India. That is why, see, benefits are one side, and what about the loss? What is that the US lost? That is what you should understand. They got some benefit, but what is the loss? Their main plank, the USA's main plank or the main weapon in non-proliferation, was NPT. They were using NPT as a weapon or a tool in ensuring that the weapons are, the nuclear weapons are not proliferated across the world. It is not spreading, and it was the main, the cornerstone. That is what we say. NPT was the cornerstone. NPT was the cornerstone in their fight against proliferation of nuclear weapon. Now, NPT is a creation of the US. US only created, US only purported and what you call supported and it has extended, or rather US only tried to spread this concept of NPT where there will be 5 countries having nuclear weapons and the rest will not have nuclear weapon. They tried and now they have killed their own baby, that is NPT. Now there is no mechanism to fight against nuclear proliferation. With the signing, even Pakistan is saying now they signed this kind of a deal, even they cannot ask Pakistan not to do this. North Korea has walked out. So now finally what has happened in early 2000, because of this the US has lost the moral high ground in asking countries not to spread. That is, in fact, I will say this Indo-US nuclear deal is the final nail in the coffin of non-proliferation. Okay, it is a final nail because they themselves destroyed it. Their weapon, their main strategy for controlling proliferation was through NPT. Now they themselves destroyed the NPT. That is the one. That is why the benefit of the US, even though these benefits are there, I will say the loss is more than the benefit. Okay. Anyway, Varun is every international treaty signed by US approved and passed by Parliament? Yes. Because US has a presidential form of government, so any treaty, any bilateral agreement has to be passed by the US Congress. Okay. And why did they forego Pakistan? Because Pakistan's utility is over. Pakistan is not even 1/4 the size of India. Pakistan economy is in real trouble. Pakistan is not a market compared to 1.3 billion market, 1.3 billion population in India. Pakistan is just 200 million. And then Pakistan is not giving any potential for the US. See, they wanted Pakistan to be used in Afghanistan, they used it, their utility is over. Otherwise, Pakistan is not a progressive democracy, lot of military rules, human rights is a problem there. Pakistan is not a poster boy for anything. So they found that if you have to compare between India and Pakistan, they found India is much useful and beneficial for the future than Pakistan. That is why they dumped Pakistan, and they also knew that you cannot have both the countries together with them. If India is there, Pakistan may not. If Pakistan is there, India may not be comfortable. That also they know. That is why they decided to dump Pakistan and become friendly to India. And what are the benefits they get from inspecting our civilian? See, if you inspection by IAEA, if IAEA inspects it, IAEA can keep a track of whether India is going ahead with any weapon program, whether we are diverting the fuel, whether we are accumulating more weapons. All these things they can easily make out, and because ultimately what is the aim of NPT or anybody in this world right now? Elimination of nuclear weapon is our aim. And they can keep a track, everybody, the whole world can keep a track of India's activities. That is why civilian nuclear facilities should be under the IAEA inspection. Okay. And ब्लू डॉट इनिशिएटिव, अभी सब छोड़ो ना यार, अभी कंट्रोल रखो, अभी मैं जितना पढ़ा रहे उसमें ध्यान रखो ना, तुम लोग अभी जोश में कुछ भी पूछने शुरू कर दिया. आई विल आंसर ओनली इफ यू आर आस्किंग ए क्वेश्चन रिलेटेड टू व्हाट आई एम टीचिंग. Don't give me advanced questions. Okay. So can we say that today's India is a capitalist India rather than a Nehru's vision? See, Nehru in 1940s, with his understanding of the world of 20th century, he spoke various things. But what is there today? And at that time, the main issue was colonialism, imperialism, and many other issues. Environment was never a factor. Okay. Human rights was a big issue at that time, the killing of the people, the racialism was a problem, apartheid was a problem. So Nehru's ideas were based on the realities of that time. Okay. So right now things have changed. So Nehruvian socialism may not be working right now. If the whole socialism has failed, Nehruvian socialism also has its limitation. So we cannot compare and say that we have given up on, that is a need of the hour, because slowly when the time changes, things are also changing. That is how it has happened. So please don't try to say that Nehruvian socialism was a failure. No, because that was the need of the hour at that time, because of the prevailing circumstances of the world. Today, even if had Nehru been alive, he himself might have changed. Who knows? See, at that time, that was the need of the hour. Now, even Nehru would have changed and said that no, we need some capitalism. He was not against entirely, because in the mixed economy concept he only brought. He wanted both, some capitalism also. He did not say that Tata should be nationalized or Birla should be nationalized. He never said that. Anyway, so that is the situation. I mean, control your emotion. That's what I am saying. Don't ask too many questions. So I mean, can we write against ruling government in exam? अरे यार कितना बार ये सब बात किया, ये सब सवाल अभी भी पूछ रहे, तुम मत लिखो, तुम मर जाओ, हमें क्या दिक्कत है? Okay, if you don't want to write, don't write. Okay, if a question is asked, you have to answer. If a question is not asked, why do you want to write? Okay, so if you are asking this question, you have no understanding of civil service exam, and I am very sorry to say this, and you are not listening to our class, you are not attending our classes. That is why these questions are coming even now. Okay. Now, coming to what happened to this nuclear deal. So, what happened to the nuclear deal right now, that is the point. So, the nuclear deal we have written, so the deal we have signed, okay, the nuclear deal we signed on 10th October 2008. Then what happened to that? That is the next question. So, the next question is, but subsequently we have not achieved no commercial deal. No commercial deal even today. Despite we signed in 2008, 12 years have gone. See, Manmohan Singh government was there till 2014. Prime Minister Modi came to power and said that abhi main karke dikhata hu, but he also could not do. And as far as the Indo-US nuclear deal is concerned, it is a stillborn baby, we can say. The deal is there. Because of that deal, we got the NSG exemption. We got the NSG exemption, but so we can deal with other countries, even we can deal with the US also, but unfortunately we are not able to move forward because of something else. Now, what happened was that when the deal was ready, when the deal was signed, now immediately we started talks for some of the US companies establishing nuclear reactors in India. Okay, US companies establishing nuclear reactors in India. Two big companies, one is two multinational firms in the US, one is called Westinghouse. Another is GE Hitachi. It was decided that, it was talked about at that time that both the companies will start, or rather will establish nuclear reactors in India, okay, and a couple of places were identified also. There were two locations identified at that time. One was in Kovada in Andhra Pradesh, okay, Kovada in Andhra Pradesh, and another was in a Mithi Vritti in Gujarat. So, two locations were identified where we can set up nuclear power plants. Okay. So, Kovada in Andhra Pradesh and Mithi Vritti in Gujarat for the American companies, that is Westinghouse and GE Hitachi. So, when the negotiation started, then the Americans were, they are private companies, they came, they want to invest. So, then they started asking, what in case, I mean, now they should know everything, whether if I am investing somewhere, what are the negatives, what are the pros and cons, what are the likely liabilities. So, they asked about India or about the Indian leaders or the Indian, the negotiators, what about a nuclear liability law in India? Okay, they asked, what is the status of nuclear liability law in India? Meaning, in case of an accident, if something goes wrong, what is the kind of liability, what is the kind of compensation these companies will have to pay? Because till this point, our nuclear power plants are all government owned. Okay, NTPC, sorry, the Nuclear Power Corporation of India Limited, NPCIL, Nuclear Power Corporation of India Limited is the single or the sole company. It is a 100% government company. So, naturally, if there is something goes wrong, the government will give compensation or government will take care of everything. That is what our understanding is. So, there was no liability law, okay. There is no nuclear liability law in India till that point. But now the private companies are coming, Americans are coming. Even when the Russia, constructed the Kodamkulam project, again the Kodamkulam, it was constructed by a Russian company, which is a government company. A government to government tie-up was there. So, again even the Russians did not ask this question at that time. But now, when the private companies are coming, the Americans quite naturally, they are all concerned about all the pros and cons. They ask this question, okay, we will come, we are planning, but what about the liability law? At that time, it was found that there is no liability law in India, no liability law. So, immediately, they said, I mean, there should be a liability law. India said, koi baat nahi, abhi bana ke dikhata hun tumko, we will give you now, we will make a liability law right now, nothing to worry, I will make and show you. See, we are very good in making law, but when it comes to implementation, we may be a big failure, and we said that we will make a law. A Nuclear Liability Act was passed in 2010. Nuclear Liability Act 2010 was passed, and we passed it such a way that because of this liability act, no foreign company will ever invest in India. We have done it such a way that nobody will invest in India in future. We have ensured that we will kill any possible future investment in India. See, and at that time, see what is happening is, you should understand, when Dr. Manmohan Singh went and signed the nuclear deal in 2005, no opposition, including our BJP, they never thought that this deal will come through, the deal will materialize. They never knew that their deal is under such discussion and will happen. So, and Dr. Manmohan Singh took all credit naturally, even though this deal was negotiated right from the Vajpayee government's time. Brajesh Mishra played a very crucial role, the National Security Advisor, and they were almost on the verge of signing before that they conducted the election and they lost the election. Manmohan Singh came and he took the credit and he signed it. But when the Liability Act came, by the time it came, the UPA 2 was in power, and when the UPA 2 was in power, by this time everybody realized that there was no expectation from UPA 1, and because of that they were not opposed properly. But when the UPA 2 came, the opposition, especially the BJP, was very clear that we have to oppose each and everything, we have to oppose properly. And moreover, the problem with the UPA 2 was that UPA got only around 258 seats, maybe 260 seats out of 545. So, they did not have a full majority, but at the same time Samajwadi Party, Mayawadi's BSP, everybody said that we are supporting. And obviously, the opposition BJP and the NDA did not have any majority, they had only around 150 seats in any case. So, now everybody was very clear that we should oppose, and when the bill came, everybody opposed. I mean, they wanted to put, the leader of opposition at that time was Sushma Swaraj, the leader of opposition in the Rajya Sabha was Arun Jaitley. So, both of them, they ensured that many points are added. I mean, because since the ruling government has no majority, opposition support was required. Opposition leaders also added many more points into the Nuclear Liability Act. They added such points that it became a problem when BJP came to power in 2014. They found that these points which were added mainly because of the pressure from the opposition leaders at that time is a problem right now. So, they made such provisions in the Nuclear Liability Act, or rather they forced the government to add such provisions because they did not have a majority in the parliament, and because of those provisions, it is very highly unlikely that any foreign company will come and invest in India. Okay. So, this Nuclear Liability Act is the problem. See, we need a liability act, no doubt regarding that, but the Liability Act's provisions should be such that it should be a win-win situation. What is the idea behind the Liability Act? The idea behind the Liability Act, in case of an accident, there should be a proper compensation to the victims. There should be proper compensation to the victims. What is the liability, or what are the liabilities of the company? See, for example, even today, suppose a rail accident take place, Indian Railways. Now, if the accident take place, somebody dies or somebody is injured, railway is not liable to pay any compensation. The Prime Minister's relief fund will be there, or some ex gratia payment will be declared by the Chief Minister or the Prime Minister. Railway will pay only if you prove that the railway, this accident has taken place because of negligence, or other there is a mistake by the railways. Otherwise, you cannot get any compensation from the railways. So, in any inquiry, ultimately you will not, railway will never agree that this accident has taken place because of the railway's negligence, and you will not be liable to get any compensation. Even after you dying, or even after you getting injured, you may not get any compensation, because our liability acts are always like that. But this time, when the Liability Act came, some of the positive things is that irrespective of the irrespective of the responsibility of the accident, a victim has certain rights. Okay. When the Liability Act was finally passed, irrespective of the responsibility, who is responsible is immaterial. If there is an accident, there is a there is a claim, or other the victims can claim compensation. So, this is part of the new Nuclear Liability Act which was passed. Okay. So, this Nuclear Liability Act ensures that the victims have a claim, victims will get compensation, and also this it also said that this act said that if there is a compensation, if there is an accident, the maximum liability of the company which runs it, okay, the maximum liability of the company, of the nuclear the reactor supplying company or running company, will be 1,500 crore rupees. The maximum liability will be 1,500 crore rupees. If there is a compensation beyond that, it will be paid by the Government of India. If more compensation required, it will be paid by the government. Okay, it will be paid by the government. Originally, when the bill was introduced, it was said that a maximum 500 crores should be paid, 500 crores by the company, the rest will be paid by the government. That is the original proposal. And this Liability Act added two very interesting points. One is section 17B. That was something which we added very much against the wishes of all the nuclear companies, or any company which is supplying equipments to the nuclear power corporation. The 17B, it said that in case of a nuclear accident, and if it is because of, in case of an accident, and especially if it is because of the any act of the supplier, because of any act of the supplier of the equipment, okay, because of any act of the supplier of the equipment or his employee, any act of the supplier of the equipment or his employee, comma, including any defect in the equipment, including any defect in the equipment. then the supplier is liable for paying compensation. So, in case of an accident, because of any act of the supplier, or supplier of the equipment or his employee or any defect in the equipment, the supplier is liable to pay the compensation. The supplier is liable to pay the compensation. And this Nuclear Liability Act also said that the nuclear companies or nuclear power companies will run by a public sector company only. Okay. The nuclear power company will be a PSU, public sector unit only. That means, if there is a, suppose GE wants to set up a nuclear reactor in India, GE can set up the reactor, but the running of the company, the day to day activity, the electricity production will be done by an Indian company like the Nuclear Power Corporation of India Limited. A public sector unit will run the company, but the foreign players can supply the equipments to this company, this public sector unit. So, the Nuclear Liability Act said only because nuclear technology is a very sensitive technology, it should not fall in the hands of unwanted elements. So, it should be run only by a public sector unit, but private players can supply equipments to them, including whether GE, Hitachi or Westinghouse or anybody can supply. But if something goes wrong, then we are saying that the supplier of the equipment will be liable for compensation. The supplier is liable for compensation. See, this is something very bizarre. Now, I will give you an example. Suppose you are traveling in a train, okay, our Indian Railway train, and if this train meets with an accident because of the failure of, say, a motor which is supplied by, say, a German company, and suppose you were a part of the victim. Okay, so you lost your something or other, you met with an accident and you are injured and you are in discomfort, you are asking for compensation, you want to ask for compensation, or some of your relatives say died in this accident, you want to get compensation. Against whom you will file the complaint? You will definitely file the complaint against Indian Railway. Suppose the Indian Railway come up and say, since this motor was supplied by a German company, so I am not liable, you please complain against this German company in a court. Will you do? No. You will say, I do not know anything, ye tumhara problem hai, it is your problem, from where you took the motor, why the motor failed, I do not know, but I travelled in your train, there is an accident, I want compensation from Indian Railway, as simple as that. Suppose you are travelling in a State Transport Corporation bus, and this State Transport Corporation bus meet with an accident because the tire, it got burst, and the tire was supplied by, say, MRF or any of these tire companies. Now, it was a defective tire, the tire got busted, that bus met with an accident and you are injured and you are asking for compensation. To against whom you will file the case? You will definitely file the case against the State Road Transport Corporation. You are not worried who supplied the tire, it is the responsibility of the State Road Transport Corporation to ensure that tire is in good shape and they are getting the right vendor. That is the norm anywhere in the world. Suppose you are sitting in this classroom, of course, nobody is there in the classroom right now. Suppose something goes wrong and if the ceiling comes down or the false ceiling comes down and fall on your head, now you will complain against ALS. You will not be complaining against the who fitted this false ceiling in this classroom, or who fitted this fan. If the fan comes down and injures you, you are not bothered whether it is a defect of the fan or whether it is who made the fan, you are only bothered, you are injured, you need compensation and you will be complaining against ALS. This is the logic. But you see what is the provision given in this Nuclear Liability Act, section 17B. of the Nuclear Liability Act says, in case of an accident because of any act of the supplier of the equipment or his employee or any defect in the equipment. See, if there is a defect in the warranty period or guarantee period and all, if something goes wrong, they may be that as per their agreement there can be some compensation clause between the supplier and the the operator, but only based on that agreement there can be. But if an accident happens, once I supply the equipment to you, it is your responsibility. That is what everybody understand that. Okay, if I supply the tires to your road transport corporation, and if the tire got burst, if something goes wrong, as per the agreement there can be some liability. Suppose you purchase a washing machine or a fridge. Now, who supplied the compressor in that is immaterial for you. If something goes wrong, you will be complaining against the company which supplied to you. Not suppose you purchased the Whirlpool washing or the fridge, and if the compressor might have been made by somebody else, you are not bothered about who made the compressor. The same thing here. So, the section 17B, it was added such a way that you want to catch the supplier of the equipments, but in the process what is happening is no supplier wants to supply anything to your company, your Nuclear Power Corporation of India Limited, because this is something unheard of in a commercial deal. Even L&T, an Indian company, L&T has complained against this kind of a provision, because L&T is a major supplier of equipments, various items to Nuclear Power Corporation of India Limited. Even L&T complained and said that what is this? Now, if I supply something to you today, and if something goes wrong tomorrow, and if you say it is because of my equipment, my nut and bolt given to you, if an accident takes place, now you cannot sue or complain against that L&T. I mean, there can be, you can blacklist that company, you can say I will not buy anything from you in future because your products were not good, but you cannot ask L&T to pay compensation. So, this 17B is something which is never heard in a commercial deal. Naturally, subsequently when this Nuclear Liability Act was passed, all the foreign companies, all the private companies have said, Dekho, if this provision is there in the act, nobody will come and invest in India, and that is what exactly happened after this 2010. Now, 10 years have gone. Two governments have tried their level best. Prime Minister Modi has tried his level best, but nothing has happened, no investment in India till now, because this provision is highly unacceptable to any private player. And there was another provision, okay, not only 17B, there was another provision. So, in this provision, one second, so this provision is section 46, okay, section 46 provided, or rather it says that even the victims can directly sue or file a complaint against the supplier of the equipment. Even the victims can file case against the suppliers. Okay. Section 46 say even victims can file a case against a supplier. See, the supplier's point of view is, suppose I am a supplier, and if I supplied something to say Czechoslovakia, and tomorrow if something goes wrong in Czechoslovakia and if the victims are filing a case against me sitting in India, I will be unnecessarily dragged into legal litigation in some other country. So, the suppliers again objected to section 46, they said that the victim should file a complaint against the operator of the nuclear reactor. Okay, operator of the nuclear reactor, not to the to the supplier of the equipments, to the operator. But both the provisions, section 17B as well as section 46 was opposed by the the private players. They said if these provisions are there, they will not invest, and that is why we have failed to get any investment in the nuclear field even today. Prime Minister Modi, when he came to power in 2015-16, it was even said that this 1,500 crore, there was a suggestion given. Now, it was said that this 1,500 crore, which is the liability of the supplier or any company for that matter, and the government even proposed Now, the BJP government has proposed and said that there can be a consortium of insurance companies, Indian insurance companies, consortium of Indian insurance companies will give insurance to the foreign players, will give insurance for a nominal premium. You have to pay monthly premium or yearly premium. So, for a nominal monthly premium or a nominal yearly premium, even India said that Indian companies like LIC, GIC and all United India Insurance Company, all Indian companies will create a consortium, and that consortium will give insurance to those foreign companies, 1,500 crore insurance. In case of a liability, in case of an accident, these Indian companies will pay them. Then what is the need for this law? See, that is what I am saying. When the opposition leaders at that time, like Arun Jaitley, both of them are no more, so, or even our Sushma Swaraj, when they insisted that this provision should be there, they never thought that they will come to power one day and it will be a problem for you. So, when they have inserted this kind of a provision, and when the companies of, now the Modi government, Prime Minister Modi's government has suggested that a consortium of Indian insurance companies will give insurance, will give this 1,500 crore if required, then the very purpose of this law is defeated and it is not required in the first place. Even after giving this assurance, these foreign nuclear companies, they have not come to India even today. We are not able to attract even one reactor after the Indo-US nuclear deal is signed from outside, not only from US, even from France. We were negotiating, advanced stage negotiations were going on with France for quite some time with a company called Areva. But France and Soviet Union or Russia, there is a difference, that is what I was always telling. And Russia, see, France even today 65% of their total electricity is produced from nuclear energy. France is the only country in the world where nuclear energy is extensively used. Russia, they have technology, but in both in France and Russia, the companies including Areva, all those companies are predominantly public sector units, or predominantly the stake by the state is very high. That is why they are not objecting, they did not object the way the US companies objected to the Nuclear Liability Act, because private companies will always calculate what are the risks involved in the investment and things like that. So, ultimately the bottom line about the Nuclear Liability, see, Nuclear Liability Act is a must, we need, because you might have heard about the Bhopal gas tragedy. In Bhopal gas tragedy, again the problem was that the victims did not get, it happened in 1984. Even today the victims have not got the compensation proper. It is a tragedy in Indian system. Our system is such that we could not give compensation even today. But the American company which was involved in it, the Union Carbide at that time, Union Carbide company, this Union Carbide is no more there, this company has been taken over by another company, the American multinational firm, but in that also the Union Carbide employees or the CEO was not punished, we could not punish anybody, and because there was no liability law also, so we cannot even give compensation to anybody. It is a tragedy, but that does not mean that you should put such conditions that nobody will come and invest in India. It should be a win-win situation, in the sense the companies should come, they should know what is the liability, victims should get support, no doubt regarding that, but that does not mean that you put such condition that nobody will come and invest. So, whatever happened, so the idea, so this Liability Act include consumer market product, no, this is Nuclear Liability Act, okay, this is not for consumer market product or anything, this is exclusively for nuclear liability, and this is a bizarre issue and it has not been solved even today. So, now when 17B, section 17B and section 46 was introduced, at that time only all independent experts, even the ruling party including the Congress, everybody said, dekho aise mat karo, don't do this. So, they did not, the opposition did not agree because ruling party had no majority in the parliament, they had to incorporate some of the provisions, they incorporated, passed the law. But you pass a law and try to fool around, you cannot get that is why the foreign companies did not come. Then when Prime Minister Modi came to power, then there was a talk about amending the 17B and section 46. At that time Congress said that no, it is a good law, you only said we will not support. See, the one-upmanship between the political parties. Ultimately, who is the victim? The very idea of the nuclear liability, the what you call the nuclear power and supporting India's growth. See, in fact, in 2008, please remember, what we said at that time was that by 2032, okay, by 2032, we wanted around 6,50,000 megawatt of electricity, 6,50,000 megawatts of electricity from nuclear power. Even today, we have not touched in 2020 because of our failure, because the collective failure, the one-upmanship between the ruling party and the opposition, we have not even touched 10,000 megawatts. Even today, we have not even touched 10,000 megawatts. Okay. So, we wanted 6,50,000 megawatts of electricity to be produced by 2032. We have not even touched 10,000 megawatts even now. Forget about even, we are not even reaching 20, not even 10. But our target at that time in 2008 we talked about was that 6,50,000 megawatts of electricity we will produce from nuclear power, and we have lost everything. So, the current situation liability act. So, in fact, there should be a general liability act even in the chemical industry or any industry, even for Indian Railway. That is what I am saying, even that liability act is missing. But nuclear liability act we passed, but it has conditions like this. So, we lost it, that is what I can say. So, why BJP can't amend? Since it has a majority, see, it has a majority in the Lok Sabha, it has a majority in the Rajya Sabha, it is not a majority, Rajya Sabha they have to try, but they also lost interest now. They tried at that time in the first UPA, first NDA, first Narendra Modi government, there was no majority proper in the Rajya Sabha, but now they may try, they can, if they feel that there is a benefit, there is a possibility, but it is a loss of face then. Okay, that is also there. Anyway, let us see, if they want, they can try. In the Lok Sabha, they have majority. In Rajya Sabha also, they can manage the majority, that these days bills are getting passed. So, we do not know, they may try now, but till now it has not passed mainly because of 17B. Till now, no nuclear deal till now because of 17B and section 46. Okay. So, that is the situation as far as the Nuclear Liability Act. Then there is another very interesting thing about this nuclear liability, that is about the Convention on Supplementary Compensation. Convention on Supplementary Compensation. So, by passing this law, we lost the winning match. We won the match, and then on the last minute we spoiled everything because of our internal political bickering, thoughtless laws being passed. Common sense was never applied. See, just since you said this, one point, in France, why we kept only 500 crore rupee compensation from a company? Because if you keep more like 1,500, the problem is no company will pay from their pocket. What will they do? They will go for insurance. If they have to pay 500 crore compensation, they will accordingly pay the insurance premium. If 1,500, triple the premium. If it is 10,000 crore compensation you have to pay, the premium will be accordingly. So, why countries like France have kept a very, see, they have kept I think only 60 million euro compensation. Okay, in France is using 2/3 of their electricity from nuclear power, and France is the country where maximum electricity generated from nuclear power, and there if a French nuclear company met with an accident, their liability is only 60 million euros, around 60 million euros as compensation. That is all. Why? Why are they keeping such a low? Because, and the rest will be paid by the government. Rest will be by the government. Why the French government is willing to pay the compensation? Because they know that nuclear accident is a rare event. How many nuclear accidents have taken place in the world? Only one or two. One was Chernobyl in 1986. Then in 2012 or 2011, that Fukushima accident because of the tsunami. Fukushima in 2011 and Chernobyl in 1984, 86, Chernobyl in 1986. Only two major accidents in the entire history of nuclear power plants. So, the French philosophy is, now if you ask the companies to pay more, okay, if the companies to pay more, they will accordingly they will go for insurance. Every year they will pay premium, and suppose from a company, from a nuclear company, the premium they have to pay is 20 crore rupees per annum per year. From where what will they do with this 20 crore? That 20 crore will be added into the cost of the electricity production, and that money will be transferred to the consumer. The consumer will pay ultimately. So, suppose you say the premium is 100 crores, no problem, that premium will be accordingly adjusted in the per unit cost of electricity. So, to avoid the common man paying premium or other a portion of that premium as part of the per unit electricity cost, the French government said that you pay very less compensation, you pay some compensation, but the rest I will pay, and if it required, the government will pay the compensation. And the French government's focus is to avoid any accident. So, in the last 70 years, in France, not even a single accident. Touch wood, it should not happen in future also. So, your focus should be to prevent the accident, and not that if an accident is happening, I will usko nichodna hai, okay, we will catch you and we will kill you and we will ensure that you pay compensation. See, our focus should be to prevent the accident from happening, and not the focus to force the company to pay maximum compensation. Yeah, they should pay some compensation definitely, but our focus should be to prevent the accident. That that is the main thing. The liability law, what is the need for liability law? If there is an accident, in the unlikely event of an accident, the victim should get compensation and victim should be protected immediately. That is our aim. Who will pay is secondary, but unfortunately in our Nuclear Liability Act, our focus was on who will pay and how much you will pay. We lost our the main focus. That is why the Nuclear Liability Act was a failure. Anyway, so now in this particular Convention on Supplementary Compensation, this is an IAEA initiated, this is an IAEA initiated convention, and this was even India signed it in 2010. And this has come into being, and in fact, originally the convention was signed in 1997, and this convention will have a fund, an international fund. This convention will have an international fund to be used for compensation for victims, to be used for compensation for victims of a nuclear accident, okay, to be used for compensation for victims in case of a nuclear accident anywhere in the world, okay, in case of a nuclear accident anywhere in the world. Okay. Who paid the compensation? Chernobyl accident? Here Chernobyl was in Soviet Union. It was in Ukraine, but it is part of the Soviet Union at that time, and nobody knows who got anything or not, because it is a communist government and it was no information was coming out. Nobody knows what actually happened, how many victims were there, who all are affected, nothing we know because of the secretive nature of that. But we do not want to do that also, we want to support the victims. So, in Chernobyl it was a government owned reactor melted down because of some error which took place in some experiment conducted by the scientists at that time. So, that is a different story. So, the idea of this CSC, Convention on Supplementary Compensation, or it is known as CSC, Convention on Supplementary Compensation, so that their international fund will be created for any accident taking place anywhere in the world, and it will also be, this fund can be used even for environmental mitigation, mitigation of environmental issues created by this nuclear accident. So, and there will be this the aim of this kind of a CSC is to have a global legal framework, a global legal framework for compensating the victims. A global law, a global legal framework, all those who are members, who are participants of that or who participate in that will have a similar global law, a global legal framework for compensating victims okay, a global legal framework for compensating victims, and also to have a national law, in tune with the CSC. Okay. So, they are coming with a global framework, and every country is asked to have a national law in tune with this CSC, I mean the Convention on Supplementary Compensation. So, they are asking, CSC members are asked to have a national law in tune with this, not the 17B and 46 and all in that. Okay. So, in tune with the the CSC provisions, and there should be the proper financial liability to be given and everything, there should be insurance. So, many things have been said in that. So, what I am trying to say is that India joined it, CSC has come into being also, but India joined, or rather India ratified it after signing it in on 4th February 2016, India ratified CSC. I mean we signed it in 2010, we ratified in 2016, and the whole thing came into force, the CSC entered into force after signing in, because the minimum number of countries were required. So, in April 2015 CSC came into force, April 2015 CSC came into force. India is a member, but again the issue is now India should modify the law, Indian law, to be in tune with the CSC provisions, which we have not done till now. So, maybe in future if some serious discussion with a foreign supplier comes, they may insist that the CSC provision should be implemented in India, then we may be talking about modifying it so that it can be, our liability law is in tune with that, and ultimately some nuclear investment can take place in India. So, what has actually happened is, after 2008, with US no investment, with France no investment, only thing happened was that in Kudamkulam we already have 2 into 1000 megawatts light water reactors, LWRs, operational. It is already operational, 2 of them. Russia has agreed to supply 2 more, 2 into 1000 more, 1000 megawatt more, and also another 2 into 1200 megawatt to be set up. So, that this Kudamkulam will ultimately become a 6400 megawatt nuclear power complex. But in these two, the second round and the third round, I mean the Russians were allowed to hike the price by India, because they had to keep in mind our Nuclear Liability Act, because Nuclear Liability Act is putting extra financial, but it will put extra financial burden on the supplier. So, India allowed Russia to hike the price. So, what is the use then? So, you are allowing the supplier to hike the price, So the purpose is defeated. My repeated argument is we lost the game. Okay, it's something like, operation is successful but the patient is dead. Doctor came out and said operation was successful, बहुत मजा आ गया, सब ठीक ठाक है, but there is a small problem, patient is dead. So we signed the nuclear agreement, but we lost the, lost everything in the process. So that is what has happened. So even we speak in the amending Article 17B or Article 9 section, not article, section 17B and section 46 would still be a hindrance, since any private company won't manage the daily affairs. No, that is okay. See, they do not have any problem, they supply, it has to be managed by a public sector unit, that is not the issue. The issue is they should not be asked to pay compensation subsequently. So that is the biggest issue. We have to remove 17B and section 46 and make it in tune with the global or the CSC provision, the Convention on Supplementary Compensation. That will solve the problem. That is the only way we can do. Okay. So colossus of the Indian workforce and all cannot be an excuse. फिर तो कुछ भी नहीं कर सकते ना. We cannot run. How can you travel in Air India then? Okay. How can you travel in Air India? If you travel in Air India, after all, Indian public sector unit companies are running. Bhagwan Bharose, we are all traveling in Air India. How will you, what is the guarantee that even the thermal power plants are safe? I mean, there are so many issues. Indian Rail, Bhagwan Bharose, we are traveling in Indian Rail. So let us not say that way. There should be provision. There should be provision, but provision for compensation. But if there is there should be norms, there should be rule. See, we also have nuclear power plants since 1969. The first power plant was set up in Tarapur, but no accident till now in India. So we should be happy about that. Our norms should be strict. But if there is an accident, that is what I am repeatedly saying. In case of an unlikely event of an accident, the victim should not be running from pillar to post to get compensation. If I am a victim, I should get compensation. I should not be worried because of whose negligence this accident took place. मैं victim हूँ, I am the victim, I should get benefit, I should be compensated, that is all. It is a problem between the government and the company and all, you decide later on. So that should be the spirit behind the whole law. Okay. So this is the idea, this is the problem, this is what you should understand about this Nuclear Liability Act, and that is why we have not moved forward as far as India and US is concerned. So the peak of our Indo-US relations peaked in 2008. Okay. We reach LWR, yesterday also I wrote, still you are not listening, light water reactor. Okay. We will talk about this in science and technology. I will be teaching you at some point of time about light water reactor also. That is a type of reactor where light water, normal water is used as a coolant. Okay. That is a light water reactor, that is LWR. We got this technology from Russia in Kodamkulam. Okay. So anyway, so India don't have good source of raw material. It is also since India have no raw material, that is okay, but we can import because of the nuclear NSG. We got exemption from NSG. We can import fuel. So fuel is not a problem right now. Okay. So Kodamkulam topic, all I said was that Kodamkulam 2 reactor already 2000 megawatt already operational. Russia established it. Okay. But that was established in 1998. That is a different story. But Russia agreed to supply and established it at that time, even before the nuclear deal. That was a one-off case. Then after 2010, Russia hiked or increased the price of the reactors, citing our Nuclear Liability Act. They said, we will have to give compensation. If you have to give compensation, उसके लिए मैं अभी से right now I am increasing the price. India agreed. India I think agreed to hike the price by almost 40%. A foolish Nuclear Liability Act has forced India to pay more. Useless. That is what I am saying. So Russia agreed. Russia will be constructing 2 more reactors immediately, then another 2 of 1200 megawatts also, but we are paying higher price because they are factoring the Nuclear Liability Act provisions also into that. That is all I said about that. Now, you may be asking how come Russia set up this in 1998, I will tell you. So, since you asked this, I am interested in telling that story also. Kudamkulam, you know, in Tamil Nadu, in Kanyakumari, 2000 megawatt. Okay. Now, what happened was that in 1986, when Mikhail Gorbachev became the president of Russia, or rather the Communist Party General Secretary at that time, and it was still Soviet Union, he made a visit to India. Rajiv Gandhi was our Prime Minister. It was a massive welcome given to Mikhail Gorbachev in Delhi, and it was a massive thing. And during that time, there were some talks, because India is already getting exempted, or rather India is already getting a victim of the NSG provision, no nuclear deal, no nuclear agreement with India by the Western world, we were worried. So, some talks about setting up a nuclear power plant in India, some talks took place, but subsequently nothing much moved forward, because Soviet Union was already in trouble. Soviet Union, the problems were going on, and finally Soviet Union collapsed in 1991. So, this nuclear power plant issue which never came up subsequent, but some discussion took place in 1986. Subsequently in 1998, when Putin became the Prime Minister of Russia, then he became the president in 2000. Okay. So, when Putin became the Prime Minister, he made a visit, and that time it is Russia. Now, Soviet Union is no more, Soviet Union is dismantled. Putin and the Russians were desperate to get some money from anywhere. So, then Putin dug up this old discussion, and he said that he can supply these reactors and he can set up this reactor in Kudamkulam right now, because he said that there was an agreement. See, there was no agreement, but Putin and India started saying there was an agreement. Okay, hamare paas agreement tha. There was no agreement. This kind of a agreement which is signed is known as godfathering, or rather grandfathering the agreement, not godfathering, grandfathering the agreement. Grandfathering the agreement. Okay. Grandfathering the agreement means there is no agreement, but this is a common term used in the international relations. Grandfathering the agreement, you are claiming that there was an agreement, but there was no agreement. So, India and Russia said that there was an agreement in 1986 regarding construction of a reactor. Subsequently only when Russia as a country was formed in 1991, they are saying, since we did not do anything, since there was a commitment made by our predecessors, our grandfather, I am fulfilling that commitment. See, Russia says I am a member of your I am a member of NSG, so I will not supply, but since my grandfather agreed, I have to fulfill the wishes of the grandfather. So, this lie, this jute, we insisted, both India and Russia said that because of that Russia can set up. So, even before Indo-US nuclear deal, Russia started constructing 2 reactors in Kudamkulam, but of course, it was under IAEA inspection only, under IAEA guidelines it was set up, and it is already operational now. So, this is called, okay, this is what is called the grandfathering. That is how this Kudamkulam was set up under Russian collaboration. Started constructing, I think, in around 2000. By year 2000 we started constructing, and both the plants are operational now. By 13-14 it became operational. Okay. So, that is why. So, Kudamkulam power plant, Kaiga is a different plant. Kaiga is in Karnataka, that is a different plant, that is under the indigenous program, no foreign collaboration involved in Kaiga. Okay. Kaiga is a Karnataka plant, a plant in Karnataka near Goa. That plant has no foreign collaboration. It is a purely Indian project. So, purely Indian we have many. After Rawat Bhatta, I mean, I was talking about, see, please remember we have Tarapur, just for your understanding, that is in Maharashtra, that was a US collaboration at that time, 1969, then Rawat Bhatta. Rawat Bhatta, that is in Rajasthan, that is a Canada collaboration. Then we conducted a nuclear test, all collaboration stopped. Now, after that we have set up power plants in what you call Kalpakam, that is in Karnataka, in Tamil Nadu, indigenous, purely indigenous. Then Narora in UP, Bulandshagar district, purely indigenous. Then Kaiga, it is in Karnataka. Then Kakrapara in Gujarat. So, all these are purely indigenous nuclear power plants in India. Okay. And we have no when a collaboration in any of these, it is purely indigenous, using the Canadian idea, we constructed, we completed, and we have done it. So, we are done here without any, collaboration with anybody. Okay. So, when in Hindu, I read about a slip from 1980 which said that Indira Gandhi refused to attend Nixon's state dinner while she was there at the UN meeting. Does we have something to do with the bad blood? See, at that time the ideology was different, and Nixon was not considered to be very friendly with India, and they have slapped sanctions against India. Many things were there. Anyway, so let us not get into those history, but this is the idea behind the whole thing. So we signed a 1, 2, 3 agreement in 2003, and why IAEA was inspecting our nuclear plant? See, earlier IAEA, see, we allowed, see, not all the nuclear power plant. We said Kodamkulam, we said about Kodamkulam, since Russia was already a member of the IAEA and this NSG and everything, Russia, while agreeing to supply this reactor to India, Russia put only one condition: this will be for peaceful purpose and IAEA will inspect. And India said, okay, let them inspect. So, it is a one-off agreement, exclusively for IAEA will inspect only Kodamkulam. So, it is not a blanket agreement for inspecting all. Why? Because we wanted the reactor at that time. Anyway, so that is how it has been done. So, we do not have enough nuclear reactors, we do not have enough nuclear power generation, we need to do a long way, investment is required, that is what we are trying. So, anyway, so that is about the deal. So, now coming to a couple of points about the Indo-US nuclear Indo-US relations. Now, about the defense deal, see, that is how we started our agreements, or the collaboration. And just a minute. So, let me talk about what are the issues, okay, what are the issues we are facing between India and US right now. Okay. So, why didn't I already told here why Russia did not claim? Because Russia is a government company, Russian company is a government company doing it, but now they are also factored in by adding the price. Okay, I have already said. So, please listen what I am saying carefully, you will understand. Now, after, so in 2006, George Bush visited India. Then in 2010, President Obama visited India. Then again in 2016, Obama again visited India. In 2020 February, our Trump also visited India, and Prime Minister Modi visited US every year. Okay, of course, I mean, but every successive president after Bill Clinton, all of them have visited India. President Obama became the first president in the history of US who visited twice India during, in both the terms, in both his terms he visited India. And in 2016 he was the chief guest of the Republic Day parade also. I mean, never in the history a US president has agreed to come for a Republic Day parade and all, and he has even, so we have definitely improved our relationship. But all I am saying is the relationship which reached a peak in 2008, it has either plateaued or slightly gone down, something like this. So, the relationship is not, it has not gone to the next level. If at all there is some progress, it is a very incremental growth. It is not the substantial jump which we could get between 2004 to 8. What we achieved between them, and we could not achieve between 4 and 8, what was achieved, we could not achieve because of various factors. Now, there are two areas I would like to discuss. One is, our trade relations, we are not able to get the breakthrough, especially after Trump came to power. After Trump came to power in 2017, 16 election, 17 January onwards, he is in power. Right now, the two things you should know, US is the largest trade partner of India. Even we have surpassed China. US, the largest trade partner of India. Around $100 billion bilateral trade, goods trade. And a second point about Indo-US trade is, India has a trade surplus. India has a trade surplus with US. Okay. India has a trade surplus. Whereas, with China we know, we have recently surpassed China, but China we have a trade deficit of almost $50 billion. Please remember the opposite. Okay. With China we have a trade deficit, with China we have a trade deficit more than $50 billion, and we are always complaining, but with US we have a trade surplus. So, that way we are in a very, very favorable condition when it comes to Indo-US relation. See, that is where we can actually multiply our relation. That is why many are talking about there should be a free trade agreement with US. Okay. So, I will be talking about free trade agreement separately in the coming lectures. So, I am not explaining much, but many talked about that, but we are not moving forward. There are still issues. The US is putting pressure on India, and we are asking, or they are asking to relax further, or rather even after when Donald Trump visited in February 2020, when President Trump visited India, there were talks about a mini trade deal, but that has not happened. Okay. There was a talk about a mini trade deal that did not happen. So, or a limited trade deal that shows, or rather despite all improvement in the relationship, that is why I am saying the bilateral relations are not growing, or rather it is not growing exponentially. It has either plateaued or slightly gone down, it has not gone up. What we achieved in 2008 through the Indo-US nuclear deal, the 123 agreement signing, that was the high point, the pinnacle, the highest point we can say. Subsequently, either we have maintained it, or we have finally somehow it has gone down a bit, despite all theatrics. Prime Minister Modi has conducted a Howdy Modi meet in a stadium, Howdy Modi in US last year. This year we had Namaste Trump. See, our leaders, both the leaders are good in theatrics, they are great in show off. Despite all this show off, despite all these visible thing. Even when Prime Minister Modi visited US in 2014, he had this, at the what do you call, Madison Square, the public meeting, Madison Square public meeting, addressing the Indian Americans there. So it is a big event. Lot of, we are saying they are great friends and everything is fine, but the kind of benefits with this kind of a camaraderie, we expect a lot of benefits for India, real benefits. When you look at that, especially in trade and all, we could not achieve. In fact, despite all these claims, the absence of a final agreement shows there are many issues between India and US. We are yet to resolve all of them. Okay, and some of the US complaints. What are the issues? Number one, the US is complaining about the India's tariff and non-tariff barriers to shield agricultural producers in India, the farmers in India. The tariff and non-tariff barriers, NTB means non-tariff barriers, tariff barriers to shield the farmers, because India has the largest, we have almost 60% of our community, 60% of India are engaged in farming, 60% of 1,300 million population into 6. So, it is almost 800 million people are engaged in agriculture or dependent on agriculture, and we know our Indian agriculture is highly inefficient. Our productivity is one of the poorest in the world. 800 million people dependent on agriculture, and you see what is the agriculture's contribution to our GDP. Agriculture is 15%, 15% only. Okay, agriculture's contribution to GDP is 15%, 15% of GDP. Service sector is contributing 55%, 55% is service sector. So what is happening is, our contribution or agriculture, 800 million people are dependent on agriculture and our contribution to GDP is only 15%. So around 27-28% is the manufacturing sector, that is all. So we have a lopsided, and we are unable to expand, or we are unable to, so this tariff and non-tariff barriers to shield the